Welcome to Listen StoryZen and Enjoy Game channel, where stories don't just entertain, they haunt you. Stay with us till the end, because today's story will change the way you see love, trust, and truth. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and 6 months ago I buried my husband. At least that's what I believed. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't hit you all at once. It settles into your bones slowly, like cold seeping through cracks in a window you forgot to close. For 41 years, I shared my life with Richard Hayes. He wasn't perfect, far from it, but he was mine, my routine, my constant, my home. Then one phone call shattered everything. They told me there had been an accident, a bad one, too bad for an open casket, and I remember the officer's voice softening as he said it, like he already knew the weight of what he was handing me. I didn't question it. I couldn't. Because when grief hits that hard, your mind doesn't look for answers. It looks for survival. So I buried him, a closed casket, a polished wooden box lowered into the ground while people whispered condolences I barely heard. My son Ethan Hayes standing beside me holding my arm as if I might collapse at any moment. Maybe I should have. Maybe that would have been easier. For the next 6 months, I lived like a ghost in my own life. Mornings were the worst. The silence louder than any argument we'd ever had. No coffee brewing, no newspaper rustling, no quiet complaints about the weather, just emptiness, and nights were unbearable as I lay on my side of the bed, staring at the space where Richard used to sleep. Sometimes reaching out half asleep expecting his warmth but finding nothing, always nothing. People say time heals, but they're wrong. Time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to carry the pain without letting it crush you completely. And I thought I was learning until the day everything broke again. It was an ordinary afternoon, and that's what makes it worse. No storm, no warning, just a simple trip to the grocery store because life doesn't pause no matter how shattered you are. I stood in the canned goods aisle staring at soup I didn't need, not even remembering why I was there, maybe just trying to feel normal again, when I heard it. A cough, not just any cough, his cough, followed by a quiet mutter about prices exactly the way he used to complain every single time we shopped together. And my heart didn't just race, it recognized. Before my mind could process anything, my body already knew, and slowly, painfully slowly, I turned. And there he was alive, standing 3 aisles away, holding a basket, comparing labels like nothing had ever happened, like he hadn't been buried, like I hadn't spent 6 months mourning him. Richard Hayes, same shoulders, same posture, same silver hair, same scar above his eyebrow, every detail, every single detail. And my hand slipped as a jar shattered on the floor, red sauce splattering like something alive while people gasped, and someone asked if I was okay, but I couldn't hear them because I was already moving, whispering, "Richard." Then louder, "Richard." And he turned, but instead of recognition there was only confusion, no shock, no emotion, just confusion as he said, "Do I know you?" And those words didn't hurt, they destroyed. I stepped closer shaking, saying, "No, Richard, it's me, Eleanor, your wife." But he stepped back, and that step hurt more than anything because Richard never stepped away from me, not once. "My name is Daniel," he said carefully, "Daniel Brooks. I think you've mistaken me for someone else." And that word, mistaken, 41 years mistaken. I showed him photos, begged him to remember, but after a flicker of hesitation that vanished instantly, he said he had never seen it before, and I saw it, that crack, and I knew he was lying. He left quickly, walking away like I was nothing, and I stood there surrounded by strangers as my world collapsed for the second time. But this time it wasn't grief, it was fear, because one thought kept screaming in my mind. If my husband is alive, then who did I bury? I should have gone home, should have called it grief or hallucination or madness, but I didn't, because instinct took over and I followed him from aisle to aisle, then outside, watching him load groceries into a different car, noticing how he placed heavy items first and bread on top exactly the same way he always did, memorizing his license plate before he drove away, and I followed through streets I barely recognized until he stopped at a small pale green house, too normal, too quiet, where a woman came out smiling at him like she knew him deeply, kissing his cheek like it was routine, and my chest tightened as 2 children ran out shouting, "Grandpa." And he laughed, that same laugh I had loved for decades, the same laugh I had cried for after his death. And in that moment, watching him walk into another life, I realized something far more terrifying than death. My husband didn't leave me. He replaced me. And that was only the beginning. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Richard and I had shared thousands of meals, arguments, laughter, silence. Now it felt like a crime scene. My phone lay in front of me, on the screen his face. Alive, breathing, smiling in another life. Every few minutes I would zoom in, as if the closer I looked, the more the truth would change. But it didn't. The scar above his eyebrow, the slight bend in his nose. The way his left eyebrow sat just a little higher than the right when he was focused. These weren't similarities. These were proof. By 3:30 a.m., something inside me shifted. Grief had been replaced by something colder, something sharper, doubt turning into certainty, and certainty demands answers. I picked up my phone and called my son, Ethan Hayes. It rang 4 times before he answered. His voice was thick with sleep. "Do you know what time it is?" "I need you to come over," I said. There was a pause. "Everything okay?" "No," I replied calmly. "Everything is not okay." Pause, longer this time. "If this is about Dad again," I saw him. Heavy, thick, uncomfortable. "I saw your father yesterday," I continued. "Alive," exhaled sharply. "Listen to me carefully. You've been through a lot. This is—" I followed him. That stopped him completely. "I saw where he lives," I said. "I saw the woman, the children. I saw everything." Now his breathing changed, subtle, but noticeable. "Stay where you are," he said finally. "I'm coming." He arrived in less than 40 minutes, didn't knock, just walked in, just like he used to when he was younger, but something was different tonight, something cautious. He said softly when he saw me sitting at the table. "Talk to me." I didn't speak. I simply handed him my phone and watched, at first confusion, then disbelief, then fear, real fear. He looked at me slowly. "Looks like Dad," he said carefully. "But people can look alike. It happens." "Show me your hand," I said. "What?" "Show me your hand," I repeated. "Your father's hand." He frowned. "Mom, what are you?" The finger, I cut him off. "The crooked pinky from when he broke it at 15. Froze completely because he remembered. Of course he did. We all did. I leaned forward. "Did you see his body?" Silence. "Ethan," I said quietly. "Did you see your father's body?" His jaw tightened. No, neither had I. Closed casket. Better this way, they had said. Less traumatic. Now it felt like something else entirely. "I want to go there," I said, standing up. "Where?" "To his house." "Mom, this isn't. Are you coming with me or am I going alone?" That's when it happened. The moment everything began to crack, he hesitated just for a second, but it was enough because hesitation means doubt, and doubt means truth is trying to escape. "I'll come," he said finally. The drive was silent, heavy, like we were both carrying something we hadn't said out loud yet. When we reached the pale green house, I pointed. "That's the one." Parked a little distance away. We sat there, waiting, watching. Minutes passed, then the door opened, and he walked out, Richard, alive, real, unmistakable. Ethan leaned forward, and everything changed. I saw it happen on his face, the exact moment denial died. His lips parted slightly, his eyes widened. Color drained from his skin, and then tears. He whispered, not confusion, not doubt, recognition. That's when I knew, before he said a single word. Before any explanation, before any confession. I knew he had been hiding something. He didn't start the car, didn't move, just sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding him together. "Sorry," he said, those 2 words, they weren't comfort, they were a confession. "Tell me," I said, my voice didn't shake, didn't break, it was steady, almost empty. He shook his head. "Tell me." Silence, then finally, "Dad didn't die in that accident. The world didn't explode." There was no dramatic moment, no screaming, just stillness, because deep down I already knew. "Go on," I said. He wiped his face, breathing uneven. "He had another life," Ethan said. "For years." "How many?" "Over 20. 20 years, half our marriage, just like that, cut in half." He said it started as a mistake, Ethan continued. "But then it just never stopped. Woman, the house, the children, it all made sense now in the worst possible way." "How long did you?" 3 years. 3 years. "You knew," I repeated. "I didn't know how to tell you." He snapped suddenly. "He begged me not to. He said it would destroy you. And this did," I whispered. He looked away. "6 months ago," he continued, his voice quieter now, "he came to me with a plan. A plan, not a mistake, not an accident, a plan. He wanted to leave for good. But if he divorced you, he'd lose too much. The house, the business, everything we built together. So instead," I said slowly, "decided it would be easier if you thought he was dead." It was the truth, cold, cruel, unapologetic. My hands started shaking. "Easier," I repeated. "For who?" "For him." "For you?" I asked sharply. Ethan hesitated again, and that hesitation said everything. "If he died," he said quietly, "everything transferred to me, legally. Then he moved most of it to himself under another identity before the accident." I stared at him. You helped him. I thought I could take care of you, he said desperately. Give you money, support you, like a charity case. I cut him off. No, like a stranger. Silence filled the car again, but this time it was different. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was truth, ugly, irreversible. How did he fake it? I asked. My voice was calm, too calm. Ethan swallowed hard. There was a man, a homeless man, terminally ill, no family except a distant relative. Stomach dropped. Dad paid them, he said. Paid both of them. They staged an accident, used Dad's documents. The man died in the hospital under his name. The air left my lungs. You buried him, Ethan whispered. A stranger. I buried a stranger. I mourned a stranger. I cried for a lie. They said not to open the casket, I murmured. You told me not to look. I thought it was better. You let me grieve a lie, I said. He broke completely. I didn't know how to stop it, he cried. It went too far. I closed my eyes, and in that moment something inside me changed, forever. The woman who cried for 6 months, she was gone. Take me home, I said. Mom, please, take me home. The drive back was silent, final. When we arrived, I stepped out without looking at him. I didn't respond. Inside the house, I stood in the middle of the living room looking around at everything, photos, memories, a life built on something I thought was real. But wasn't, not completely. 41 years, half of it a lie. My husband didn't die, he escaped. My son didn't protect me, he betrayed me. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would not cry again, not for him, not for any of them. Because this story wasn't over, not even close. And what they didn't realize was that I had just stopped being the victim and started becoming something far more dangerous, someone who wants the truth, no matter the cost. For 3 days, I disappeared, not physically. I was still in my house, still answering the occasional call with short, distant replies. But emotionally, I was gone. Ethan called me 12 times, left messages, came to the house twice. I watched him from the upstairs window as he stood at the door, knocking, waiting, hopping. I didn't open it. For 41 years, I had been the woman who responded, the one who forgave, the one who fixed things, but not anymore. This silence wasn't weakness, it was preparation. Grief had softened me, but betrayal sharpened me. Every tear I had cried over the last 6 months now felt like wasted emotion, misplaced loyalty given to a man who had carefully erased me from his life. And now I was done being erased. On the 4th morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in months, my mind was clear. No confusion, no denial, just purpose. I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. The woman staring back at me looked older but stronger. There was something new in her eyes, not sadness, not even anger, clarity. Done, I whispered to my reflection. And I meant it. That morning, I didn't go back to the pale green house. I didn't follow him. I didn't watch from a distance like some broken ghost clinging to the past. No. If I was going to move forward, I needed the truth, documented, proven. I drove downtown to a building I had passed 100 times but never entered. A small office on the 3rd floor, frosted glass. Black lettering, private investigations. The man behind the desk looked up as I walked in, mid-60s, sharp eyes, the kind of man who didn't waste words. Can I help you? He asked. I said, sitting down without hesitation. I need to find someone. Studied me for a moment. Missing or hiding. Hiding, I replied. And legally dead. That got his attention. I didn't tell him everything, not the emotions, not the betrayal, not the years of marriage, just the facts, the accident, the closed casket. The man I saw, the second life, the photos, the address, everything that mattered. He listened carefully, didn't interrupt, didn't react. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. If what you're saying is true, he said slowly, this isn't just personal, this is criminal. I know. It'll take time, he added. And it won't be cheap. I can pay. That part didn't scare me. What scared me was not knowing. I want proof, I said firmly. Assumptions, not guesses. I want everything. He nodded once. Then you'll get everything. I wrote the check. And just like that, the investigation began. The next 7 days changed me more than the last 6 months ever could. I didn't sit at home waiting. I didn't cry. I observed. I studied. I learned. Every morning I drove past the pale greenhouse, different times, different angles. Sometimes I wore sunglasses, sometimes a hat. Sometimes I parked far away and watched. Sometimes I drove slowly past like I belonged there. I memorized his routine. He left at 8:15 every morning. Always alone, always calm. He drove to a small office across town, not the business we built together. Something new, something smaller, something fake. In the evenings, he returned home at exactly 6:05. The woman, her name I later learned was Claudia, would be waiting. Dinner, laughter, normal life, a life that should have been mine. But here's the strange part. I didn't feel jealous anymore. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt something else. Distance. Like I was watching a stranger live a life I once thought belonged to me. Because the man in that house was not the man I married. That realization freed me in a way I didn't expect. On the 7th day, my phone rang the investigator. "I have something," he said. I went to his office immediately. He handed me a folder, thick, heavy, real. Inside was the truth, fake identity documents. A birth certificate issued years after my husband was actually born. Different name, different history, different life. Bank records, millions transferred weeks before the accident. Opened under the false identity. Money moved carefully, strategically, utility bills, tax filings, proof that he had been living in 2 homes for over 20 years, half a lifetime, split between truth and lies. Then came the last section, phone records, calls, dozens of them between him and Ethan before the accident, after the funeral. During the months I believed I was alone, I closed the folder slowly. My hands didn't shake this time. My heart didn't race. I just understood this wasn't a mistake, this wasn't confusion, this wasn't even betrayal in the emotional sense. This was a plan, a long, calculated, carefully executed plan, and I had been the final piece they removed. "Do you want to take this to the police?" the investigator asked. I looked at him, then at the folder, then back at him. "Not yet," I said, because something inside me had changed, again. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. This was about control. For months, they controlled the story, they controlled the narrative, they controlled what I believed, not anymore. I went home that evening and sat in silence, not thinking, not planning, just absorbing. Then I made the next move. I called a lawyer, not a family lawyer, not someone who handled divorces or property disputes. A criminal attorney. She listened to everything, reviewed the documents, didn't interrupt, didn't react emotionally. When I finished, she leaned forward slightly. "What you're describing," she said, "is criminal conspiracy. Just betrayal, not just deception, crime. Identity fraud," she continued. "Financial manipulation. Forgery. Exploitation." Each word landed heavier than the last. "You are legally entitled to everything that was taken," she said. "More importantly, they can be charged." For the first time, this felt real, not emotional, not personal, legal. "What do you need from me?" I asked. She looked at me carefully. A confession would make this airtight. A confession. And suddenly everything became clear. Ethan, he was the weakest link, not because he was guilty, but because he still cared. And people who cared talk. "I can get that," I said. That night I prepared, not emotionally, strategically. I placed a small recorder in my purse, tested it twice, made sure it worked perfectly. Then I practiced. My tone, my expressions, my questions, not angry, not accusing, curious, calm, understanding. Because the truth is people confess more easily when they feel safe. The next day I called Ethan. He answered immediately, relief in his voice. "I don't want to fight," I said softly. "I just want to understand." Silence. Then, "Of course," he said. "Anything." Agreed to meet for lunch. And just like that, the trap was set. He didn't know it, didn't suspect it, didn't feel it. But everything he said that day would change his life forever, because this time I wasn't his mother. I was the truth he couldn't escape. And he was about to tell me everything, voluntarily. The restaurant was quiet. Soft music played in the background. People talked in low voices. Plates clinked gently, normal life, the kind of normal that no longer existed for me. Ethan was already there when I arrived. He stood up quickly when he saw me. There was relief in his eyes, hope that maybe everything would go back to how it was. He didn't know there was no back anymore. I smiled faintly and sat down. "I don't want to fight," I said softly. "I just want to understand everything." Nodded immediately. "Of course, I'll tell you anything." That was all I needed. The recorder in my purse was already on. At first, I asked simple questions, gentle ones. When did it start? How did Dad manage both lives? Did anyone else know? He answered everything, easily, openly, like a man confessing to someone he trusted. Then I went deeper. "The money," I said. "How was it moved?" He hesitated for just a second. "Then, before the accident, Dad transferred most of it into accounts under his new identity. The rest came to me legally after his death, and then I moved it." "How?" "Wire transfers, some under forged authorization, some through shell accounts he set up. Fraud, all of it recorded. And the accident," his voice dropped. "We paid someone, a terminally ill man, no family except a distant relative. They agreed. We used Dad's documents. The body was unrecognizable." I didn't react. Didn't flinch, because by then I had already stopped feeling. By the time lunch ended, I had everything, a full confession, every detail, every crime, and he had no idea. When we stood up to leave, he looked at me with something close to relief. "I'm glad we talked," he said. "Am I?" I replied. but not for the reason he thought, because at that exact moment, his life had already started falling apart. That same afternoon, my lawyer filed everything, the evidence, the recordings, the financial records. The identity fraud. Within hours, the case was accepted, warrants were issued, and just like that, the truth became law. The arrest happened early the next morning. I wasn't there, I didn't need to be, but I imagined it clearly. The knock on the door, the confusion, the realization. The moment when everything he believed was hidden was suddenly exposed. Ethan called me over and over. I didn't answer, because some conversations don't deserve a response. By afternoon, the news had spread. Family, friends, neighbors. Everyone who once stood beside me at the funeral now whispering a completely different story. Not about loss, about deception, about betrayal, about truth. Then my lawyer called again. "They've frozen the accounts," she said. "The false identity is being dismantled. He has nowhere to go." That's when I knew it was time, not for revenge, not for anger, for closure. I drove back to the pale green house. But this time I didn't hide. I parked right in front, walked to the door, and knocked. The woman, Claudia, opened it. She looked at me politely, confused. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm here to see your husband." She frowned slightly. "He's in the backyard." She stepped aside, let me in, and just like that I walked into the life that replaced mine. He was standing near the fence, working like nothing had happened. For a second he didn't see me. Then he turned and everything stopped. "Eleanor," he whispered. No confusion this time, no pretending, just recognition. I held out an envelope. "These are legal documents," I said. "You should read them." His hands trembled as he opened it. His eyes scanned the pages, and I watched as his world collapsed. "What is this?" he asked. "What did you do?" I told the truth. "That's all, nothing more, nothing less." Behind me, Claudia stepped closer. "What's going on?" she asked. I turned slightly. "His wife," I said. "His real wife." Heavy, unbearable, Claudia looked at him, waiting, hopping. "This true?" He didn't answer, and that silence was louder than any confession. "You told me you were widowed," she whispered. "You said you had no one." "I had someone," I said. "Me." He sank to his knees. "Eleanor, please." "No." I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry, didn't break. "You made your choices," I said calmly. "You don't get to rewrite them now." Echoed in the distance. "They're coming," he whispered. I said, and for the first time I turned my back on him, not in anger, but in finality. He called my name, begged, but I didn't stop. Because the man I loved was already gone. And the man behind me was just the truth. The police arrived minutes later. I didn't watch. I didn't need to, because justice doesn't need an audience. It just needs truth. 3 weeks later, he died, not in court, not dramatically. A heart attack in a holding cell, alone. When I got the call, I felt nothing. No grief, no relief, just distance, like hearing about a stranger. They asked what I wanted to do with the body. "Cremate him," I said. "No service." Because he had already taken enough from me. He wasn't taking one more performance. Ethan took a plea deal, prison, not forever, but long enough. We spoke once after sentencing. "I love you," I told him, and I meant it. Love doesn't erase consequences. Didn't argue, didn't defend himself. For the first time, he understood. Months passed, and something unexpected happened. I healed, not completely, not perfectly, but honestly. I redecorated the house, traveled, laughed again. Not because I forgot, but because I finally understood. One day I went back to the grave, the one with his name on it, and I stood there quietly, not to mourn, but to realize something. There was never a husband buried there, only a lie, and the woman who believed it. I walked away, without looking back, because here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes, the worst thing isn't losing someone. It's realizing they were never who you thought they were. If this story shook you, follow, listen StoryZen, and enjoy Game Channel. Because some stories don't just end, they stay with you, forever.